Welcome, and today I want to explore and revisit some towers, and specifically the towers in Bologna, Italy. And I've always been fascinated with these older images of the city of Bologna. And between the 12th and 13th century, the number of towers in the city was very high, possibly up to 180. The reason for the construction of so many towers are not clear. One hypothesis is that the richest families used them for offensive and defensive purposes during the period of the investiture controversy. So this is really interesting that, for once they tell us that the purpose of the construction of these towers is unclear. Seldom do we actually get the mainstream telling us that they don't know about something. Usually they give us some kind of a story. And during the 13th century, many of the towers were taken down or demolished. So really what they're telling us is that they don't know when these towers were really built. We have between the 12th and 13th century, the number of towers was as high as 180, but really no story to why any of these towers were constructed, or even when any of these towers were constructed. Fewer than 20 remain today. Among the remaining ones, the tallest, the Asinelli Tower, stands at 97 meters. And then they go on to explain to us how they were constructed, when, we have no date given to when they were constructed, or by who, or for what purpose, but they jump right into how the construction took place, with the use of serfs. To build a typical tower with a height of 60 meters would have required between 3 and 10 years worth of work. Each tower had a cross-square section with foundations between 5 and 10 meters deep. They are located at the intersection of the roads that lead to the 5 gates of the old ring wall. It was located at the site of the early medieval gate. Now here is a recreation on this blog, a computer-generated recreation. Still pretty amazing, but yet not as amazing as the older photos. And we'll get into that in a minute here. Here's an example. So I believe that this photo, or this lithograph type image, is from the 1700s. And just amazing. The build out, and this is pre whatever cataclysm took place in this city. Because in this image, none of the towers are leaning. Everything is perfect, straight as could be. And we see this amazing wall, which to me tells me that, there was no need to build these towers, as the narrative tells us, as a defensive mechanism between feuding families in the city. I think that whatever enemy this city had was outside of these walls, and a river going around it. And here we get an image of the construction. Now these may have been reinforced after, but we do see this cross section running through. And the truth is I've considered building towers at times with the means that I have available to me, which isn't much. And I'd imagine building something like this. Running wood throughout so you can support your next footing wall, and you build it up, and then again wood, and you build your wall around that wood, and you continue with these levels. Now here's my favorite picture, and this one, you know, I would say is as old as photography is. And forgive me, I don't have the date on this one, but it's the best picture I've seen. We get a real clear look at this massive, massive wall, and, you know, towers every so often placed along the wall. Here we see the Essanali Tower, the one at 97 meters. And so this photo now is clearly after the cataclysm, because we do see leaning of the towers, and we also see much less than we saw in this photo. I mean, in this lithograph image, this is absolutely amazing. I mean, the build-out of this city is just amazing. But this is probably the best photograph I've ever seen of ancient Bologna, and really amazing that this was captured and still remains. And to think that a people clearly over 200 years ago, a minimum of 200 years, would be this advanced is astonishing. Not just one tower. And it makes you wonder, you know, now that only 20 towers remain, it really makes you think about the ancient world. And you know, when we do see a couple towers here or there, and was that the location of a much grander city, and all we're seeing is a couple towers here, a couple towers there, and yet just like this city, and just like we'd never learned about this in our narrative, it would not be surprising that this would extend to many, many parts of the world. Now here's another very old photo that I found, one of the older, and I do believe this is an actual photograph. And here is that same image that we were just looking at on this blog, but this blog gives us a poor quality resolution, but they actually give us more of the peripheral of this photo. And what I found interesting in this photo was what looks like cities back here as well, and what looks like just a grand and glorious castle up here on the hill. Just an amazing monster of a castle, if I'm seeing that correctly. And I'm not sure what to make of this little dome. You know, is this some kind of a bubble? I'm not sure. You know, was this more futuristic? Then is that what this artist is portraying here? You know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about these lines. You know, could this be some kind of a weapon being depicted? And you know, they had some kind of a force field around there. I don't know. Why would this be included in this image? Very interesting. But the resolution is very, very amazing on this one. I believe that it's the same image, and why we're not getting the whole thing like we did on the other one, I'm not sure, you know, because that castle would be situated up here somewhere, and maybe that's why. And it does look like there is some leaning, and perhaps there are some leaning towers in here. But we get a good idea of the amount. Now, some of these don't look like they could have been livable, or what function they might have had, although we do see that the tops have clearly been knocked off. And here we see what the top would have looked like, you know, some type of antiquitech device. And it would seem that that would have been the purpose of these. as sophisticated as this city is, it wouldn't be shocking. Just amazing. Absolutely amazing for an old time period. Now, this is the next most amazing picture I've seen. And this one is just absolutely amazing. And again, I don't have a date. I'm going to say this is as early as photography could be. And I do believe that this is a real photograph. Just astounding that we're even seeing this. Look at this. I mean, how many people could have lived in this city, and what kind of city was this? I mean, what an amazing thing to have this wall, and really, I mean, there is a story here, and just scratching the surface, we don't get the story, but I'm just absolutely blown away by this. One of the most amazing pieces of research that I've ever looked into, and I don't remember how I ever even came across this, but I can't get enough of it, and I wish we had better resolution and more information. Now, here was a look at some of the great towers of the world, Venice, Pisa, and then we see a comparison with the Tower of Bologna. And the Tower of Bologna being the largest of them. And, here again we have the flag thrown over the Antiquitech. And it seems to me that, even in this little depiction, it just really seems like there was more to this tower. I mean, even though I'm sure the artist had no intentions of depicting this, it appears as if they're mud-flooded, even in this image. It looks like there's a lot more to this tower. And perhaps the top part, came later, and we're just seeing this to me looks like there's more under here. You don't start a foundation like this. And both of them really have this same pattern. How very interesting. And then I just wanted to have a little peek at some other towers of the world and just how mysterious and fascinating these towers are. And some of my favorites are like these that we see in China and in Nepal. And again, these have mostly been destroyed. But to think that, up here on the mountains, and just to have towers littered on the hillside, again, the remains of an ancient people, and a glorious people, not a primitive country people. Now it's somewhat primitive and country. But this looks like this could have been the remnants of a very similar city, of what we were just looking at in Bologna. And in this case, we have more than, the 20 plus towers that are left in Bologna. And there are many towers around that city as well that house towers of the same style, so it was not just isolated to that particular region. And even when we see things like this, I have a lot of this type of formations in my neck of the woods. And this, what I'm really coming to understand is that there's a lot more to this. And these are also what I believe to be remnants of some kind of structures or something that was intelligently designed at one point. And really, this is not natural like we've been led to believe. And again, back to these towers in Tibet, and how absolutely fascinating, these are even more fascinating than the ones in Italy that we're just looking at, only because these are star-shaped. The engineering here, this is not just a mountain country people here that, threw up this type of tower. This is a star tower. I mean, look at this. I mean, hold a piece of paper up to this and just see how perfect this is engineered, like the greatest of greatest buildings could be. Again, these people down here are not the builders. And you see the deterioration of the buildings, and perhaps most of the building is underground, and these are just the tops poking up. Perhaps there's a lot more here, and this has all just been decimated in a cataclysm. And then it brought me to, an image like this, the stones of Sardinia. And again, what are we really seeing? I showed in another video off of the coast of Oregon how we can see things like this poking up through the green vegetation all over the place. And to me, it's pretty clear that this is the remnants, just simply the foundation of a massive, massive castle, and just amazing structure. And these would have just been simply the foundations for amazing spires shooting up. And just to give an example of this, a little depiction, we can have a look at this. And so when we look at something like this, then it can make sense. Why would you have so many round sections at the base here? Well, this is what we're seeing, round section here, round section here. I mean, and again, another purpose to these. It would just be a waste of resources. I mean, how many lookout towers and defense posts do you really need? These are clearly built with intention and purpose in mind. As beautiful and mystifying as they are to us, I don't think that was the reasoning for building this way. And again, when we see something like this, that's all that we have left. We see the centerpiece has just been destroyed and perhaps filled with dirt, like many of the ruins that we see. It's almost like they've deliberately had mud dumped in them. A lot of the amazing structures that we find in Peru, a lot of the towers in Peru, same thing. Here, for example, and many of these towers in Peru have just been buried, as if somebody just dumped mud and they, end up excavating them. And again, let's look at a comparison of modern block work here on the left. Crude as could be, the crudest of crude compared to this glorious structure, which clearly must have been some kind of mold, or each block was molded into place, or like a sandbag that hardens, but not chiseled stone. This was molded and fit together like a glove, piece by piece, and really has withstood the test of time. And let's just have a look at the Tower of Babel while we're speaking of amazing towers. We have this story in our history of perhaps the greatest tower, and perhaps the most popular story about a reset. And here are people that reached a level of advancement. So here we have the Bible contradicting the mainstream narrative, in which, we're primitive and we rose up and up and up, and there's no leap, or there's no going backwards. It's just one direction. And yet the Bible tells us clearly that there was a very advanced people, but they became corrupted, and the Lord had to wipe them out. The compassionate Lord had to remove this civilization. There's much more to it. I think what we're seeing in Bologna and in Tibet, these are remnants of this ancient people. that we have depicted in this image and that we have spoken of in the Bible. And look at this. I mean, for this time period, this is supposed to predate all of our stories. I mean, this is pre all great civilizations that, we say we have created in the modern narrative. But when we look down here, I mean, what are we seeing here? Did somebody just make this up? I don't think so. Again, I think this is a depiction of exactly what was here. I don't think that this was made up. And yet these temples are just absolutely amazing down here. And just this monster. I mean, what can be said about such a structure? What could be the purpose of such a structure? And here now we see what the narrative would tell us people would be living in. And, clear up to the early 1800s, even early 1900s in some cases, and even modern day. This is still how some people build. This is really what people can wrap their heads around in this time period. Now here we have a pyramid depicted back here. It looks like a type of step pyramid. But this is amazing. And what does the Bible tell us? That this was a one world speaking, one language people, and really amazing. All these different styles here. Here it looks like a Greco-Roman architecture with some towers back here and, antiquitech on the roofs. In Babylon now we have some tents, maybe some traveling merchant type situations, and some more little shanty kind of huts here, and this pyramid, and again more Greco-Roman back here, and towers, and something that we'd see in the United States that they would call a post office back here. Really, really amazing. What do we have up here? Trees and gardens growing on the top. And, we've all seen pictures of this. And in some cases, more is destroyed. Another half will be destroyed. But yet, we have an idea of what the Tower of Babel looked like. And then I just wanted to focus on a comparison of the world's 7 tallest towers in modern day. Well, this says it was created in 2008. And we have the Tokyo Sky Tree, the Canton Tower in China, the CN Tower in Toronto, Canada, Ostankino Tower in Russia, Oriental Pearl Tower in Shanghai, Milad Tower in Iran, and the Kuala Lumpur Tower in Malaysia. Absolutely amazing. I mean, to see this type of modern antiquitech. I mean, when we looked at this other image over here, this is the towers of the past. And what were the purpose of these towers? And what are the purpose of these towers? They'll tell us communications and whatnot, and then we have to ask ourselves when we see something like this, again, what was the purpose? And lastly, I just wanted to focus on this image of the former towers, the so famous towers in New York City. And I had never seen this image until recently, I would say within the last 3 months. And, I just kind of saved it and filed it away. And today I'm just going to bring it out and pose the question to any of you. Have any of you been or had been in the world towers? Is this for reals? What are we really seeing here? Were there really floors in this building? Or was this some type of antiquitech? Could that have been the purpose all along? And I have had comments of people depicting a lot of strange anomalies with these towers. but personally I'd never been inside and never had spoken to anybody inside. Could there have been floors maybe on the top, maybe in the middle here, and maybe on the bottom, and really most of it was hollow and serving another purpose? I don't know. I'd be interested to see what any of you think. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed, and do have a blessed day, and please like, comment, and subscribe.